All right, so let's dive into the new living wage rates in Ontario for 2024. Yeah, it's a big deal because these updated numbers really shine a light on how much people need to earn just to get by comfortably in different parts of the province. Okay, first off, let's clarify. A living wage is not the same as the minimum wage. A living wage represents the hourly amount a person needs to cover basic expenses like rent, food, childcare, and transportation, basically the essentials, right? Now let's talk about the big picture. The Ontario Living Wage Network, OLWN, recently released their updated report for 2024, and the numbers are, pretty eye-opening. For example, the Greater Toronto Area, GTA, tops the list with a required living wage of $26 per hour. That's a solid jump from last year's $25.05 and significantly higher than the provincial minimum wage of $17.20 per hour. This difference really underscores how even a full-time minimum wage job won't cut it in many parts of Ontario. I see why this is important. It's not just about survival. It's about being able to participate fully in your community. The OLWN calculates these rates using a basket of goods and services, which includes everything from housing and food to occasional recreational activities. Yeah, they even factor in taxes, government benefits, and family size to make sure these numbers are realistic for people living in different circumstances. Let's break it down by region because, okay, the costs vary a lot depending on where you are. Like I said, the GTA is the priciest at $26, but in places like London, Elgin, and Oxford, the rate is $19.50, which is the lowest in the province. Still higher than the minimum wage, though. Other notable areas include Ottawa at $22.80 and Northern Ontario at $20.30. Right? This variation reflects regional differences like rental costs, food prices, and transportation. So, what's driving these increases? No surprise here, rent. Housing costs are a major factor in the rising living wage rates, even though inflation overall has cooled a bit this year. Food prices, while not climbing as quickly as they did last year, are still high compared to a few years ago. This combination of high fixed costs makes it really tough for families to stretch their budgets, right? Something I found interesting is how these rates affect employers. Over 640 organizations in Ontario have signed on as certified living wage employers. That means they voluntarily committed to paying their workers at or above the living wage for their region. Yeah, this shows that businesses are starting to recognize the value of fair wages, not just for workers, but also for employee retention and morale. Okay, let's get into the policy implications. The OLWN emphasizes that these rates are meant to serve as a call to action for employers and policymakers. They highlight the stark gap between what's considered a living wage and the minimum wage, which leaves many workers struggling. Even with the annual October 1st increase in the provincial minimum wage, there's no region in Ontario where you could work full-time at minimum wage and cover all your basic expenses. Right, the big question is, what's next? The living wage debate is sparking conversations about income inequality and economic justice. Yeah, advocates argue that governments should consider linking minimum wages more closely to actual living costs. Others say that businesses should take the lead by adopting living wage policies voluntarily, like those certified employers I mentioned earlier. Now, for anyone wondering, should I be worried about these rising rates? The answer depends. For workers, it's a clear signal that the current minimum wage isn't enough. For employers, it's an opportunity to reevaluate pay scales and think about long-term benefits like improved employee satisfaction and reduced turnover. Okay, and for policymakers, it's a wake-up call to consider structural changes to address the affordability crisis. In summary, the new living wage rates in Ontario highlight the growing challenges of making ends meet in today's economy. While the updates aim to provide clarity and fairness, they also reveal the gaps in our current system. Right? It's a reminder that tackling the cost of living crisis will require effort from all sides, workers, employers, and governments alike. So, yeah, what's your take on all this? Do you think businesses should voluntarily pay living wages, or is it the government's responsibility to step in? Let me know in the comments.
Thanks for watching our video. Please hit the button and subscribe the channel.